Welcome to the Week Ahead, a podcast by SBM Intelligence. I'm your host, Veronica Pana Igube. Every Friday, we explore stories that are shaping our continent. Ghana has signed a $256 million debt restructuring deal with the UK, while the IMF begins its fifth review of the country's bailout, which could unlock more funds. Will this boost be enough to strengthen Ghana's economic recovery? A gold mine collapsed in Zamfara state, killing about at least 13 miners, with officials blaming heavy rains and unsafe illegal mining. Can stronger regulatory strategies truly stop unsafe mining practices? Manufacturers caution that new tax stamps could raise costs and harm competitiveness, while from 2026, Nigerians working remotely for foreign firms will pay income tax of up to 25%. Can these policies boost revenue without stifling industries or workers? Joining us today for further insight is Victor Ejechi, an analyst with SBM Intelligence. Welcome, Victor, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
It's a pleasure. So let's start with our first story. Ghana just signed a 256 million debt restructuring deal with the UK. Um, do you think this is just a short-term fix or a real step towards stability? I mean, can you just help us break down what this deal is about and just let the listeners learn more?
Yeah, so thank you again for having me. For me, I think I would say it's an important step, but it's not exactly a silver bullet. Reason is because the UK deal obviously signals what I would call a goodwill from IMF, which I would call also a major bilateral creditor. Usually, when we talk about debt, it kind of stall most times when one creditor refuses to move. But then let's talk about scale. Now, in terms of scaling now, for example, we are talking about $256 million. It's actually a small fraction of Ghana's over 20, more than $20 billion external debt. Now, the risk stability will not depend on whether other large creditors like maybe China or the Paris Club will follow suit, and whether Ghana itself will stick to reforms under the IMF program. So I will call it a progress in the right direction, but it's not the end of the story itself.
I mean, you mentioned the Paris Club and China. Do you see this deal encouraging other creditors to come to the table, or do you think that it will be harder to replicate something like what they're having with the
Yeah,
UK?
so it's a signal to others, right? Now, when one creditor moves, it reduces the excuses for others to hold out. Now, so it cannot be a signal that other creditor wants to actually move into Ghana and do the same, replicate the same thing, right? But for China, for example, it negotiates, for what I'm aware of, China usually negotiates case by case basis, and then the private bond holders we want obviously tougher terms. So what Ghana has going for it is the IMF endorsement. That in itself creates a form of pressure on creditors to compromise. But still, as I said, every deal will be a form of negotiation. So the UK agreement opens the door, but Ghana has to work creditor through it one after the other. So it's not necessarily a silver bullet, as I mentioned, but then it's something that can actually happen. It can open doors for other creditors to come in.
But I mean, finally on this story, I would like to know your thoughts about bailout. Do you think that they help a country build resilience, or do you think that it's just a trap for countries, to have that circle of dependency on the people who give them credit?
That question sounds like Nigeria. I remember that there was a time we had a bailout using the Paris Club issue, but then It depends on what country do with them, basically. Bailout creates a breathing room. They free up fiscal space so government can keep the light on. But if that space isn't used for structural reform, so you're getting bailout, but you're not thinking about structural reforms, you're not improving tax collection, you're not diversifying your export, and you're not cutting waste, then it becomes more like a dependency. So we've seen countries like Ghana before, we've seen countries like Zambia returns to the IMF repeatedly because the reforms didn't stick. So resilience comes with bailout, but I would say that it largely depends on what the country decides to do with the fund itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Let's move on to our second story where Zamfara gold mine collapsed. Our thoughts and prayers are with the people who have lost their families and their loved ones, and with Zamfara State as well. But I mean, this is a sad story coming out from Zamfara where the mine has collapsed. And this has raised fresh concerns about illegal mining. Why do you think people are still taking such risk and endangering themselves? And I mean, we're supposed to have stronger regulations. What do you think is lacking that, they said some of the reason for the collapse was based on heavy rains and illegal mining, unsafe illegal mining. So how do we as a country ensure that this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, so just like you said, our heart goes out with the people of Zamfara State, right? But this might sound like an excuse for misbehavior, but then again, it comes down to poverty and opportunity. Now, for many in Zamfara and other parts of the northern Nigeria, for example, illegal mining is one of the few ways to earn quick income. The gold is there, the buyers are ready, and there is no alternative livelihood that pays as much. So people know the risk. Of course, they know the risk involved, but when the choice is not between hunger and danger, most people would choose danger. So it's the same logic behind migration. Or there was a time I did the story one time where people were using the stowaway way to travel to other country. Now the danger of moving in that ship under the beneath the ship to travel overseas to other country, the danger is there. But when they also look at the in quotes now, the enjoyment that might probably come up at the end of the day, they will decide to take that risk. So I think it just comes down to poverty and opportunity. Yeah.
I mean, it's sad. So, like, it's sad that, there's this revenue there, and people, like you said, it's like the end goal. I can suffer now, and at the end of the day, it's like, oh, the enjoyment I will
Exactly.
get from this gold mining is. But then, isn't that where government plays a role, in the place of putting stiffer regulations, ensuring those that break those regulations, especially having um, poor infrastructure in your mining facilities to pay the penalties. I mean, that's just on one thought, right? Don't we need tougher regulations as well? But don't we also need businesses as private businesses as well? What do you think? Do we need more players in the industry? Because then if you have more players, then you see them, I mean, you see them would create more structures, more industry, and then people can get employed, more people as well. I mean, because if they have that resource in the region or in the state, then the people who are in the state should be able to maximize it and still be safe. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I totally agree with you, right? But I also feel like regulation alone won't work in this case. So we've seen bans in South Africa before, we've seen bans even in Nigeria, in other part of the country, right? But what happened after those bans is that they only push mining further on the ground. So people more likely to go hidden more to do these things. Now, what for me is missing is formalization. Now, what I mean by that is that if government works with communities to register minors, for example, provide basic safety training and create more like people can mine legally and sell legally, give them more safety. So when you criminalize everyone, you're going to lose what I call visibility and control. But when you formalize it, you can now regulate and tax, which obviously can have be a form of revenue for government. Because the people that are actually doing these things, they're hiding, and then because they're hiding, they're not taking conscious of, they're not being conscious of security, and that in itself becomes a problem. So I'm thinking that if government can actually form a form of formalization of this process, if the people are paying tax, they will expect some level of safety and regulation that the government have to put there. It might just actually work in that case. But just saying that the government should just regulate it and all that, it's just going to create a form of more people are going to do it, but they will be hiding to do it. So that's what I think about that.
I mean, I agree with you when you talk about the formalization of mining, especially when you spoke about basic safety training. I think that that's also what is lacking as well. And the more they, formalize it, the more there's safety as well and revenue for the government, as you rightly pointed out. Okay, let's move to our final story, where Nigeria's new tax policies. So I know Nigeria this year passed their tax laws that are coming into effect next year, January. And there has been a lot of back and forth, controversy about this new tax regime and fears as well. And this week we saw manufacturers warn that the new stamp could raise costs. Do you think the government is balancing its revenue goals with business reality on ground?
Yeah, so this tax thing is going to affect a lot of us. Starting from next year when implementation is going to take place. People are crying everywhere. But then again, tax is our civic responsibility. Now, going back to your question, at this moment, I would say not very well. Now, the idea behind tax stamp is to improve compliance and also stop counterfeiting of products, which in itself is valid. But the way it's being rolled out, it risks rising production costs for manufacturer. Already, those people are already suffering in terms of inflation, and then that's going to actually affect energy costs and naira depreciation. So compliance measures end up with shooting up factory or raising what I call consumer prices, then the policy defeats its purpose. One thing that I think is going to happen is if they go ahead with this, because most times the question we've always asked is that what kind of inflation is actually affecting Nigeria? So I think it is actually cost push. Cost push essentially means that if fuel is expensive, the manufacturer is going to introduce that in the product that he or she is selling, and it's going to trickle down to the person buying it. So the person is going to also be affected because of inflation that happens. So there seems not to be that balance. There seems not to be that balance in government policy as regards to revenue goal and the business retailer. Because if government is saying they want to create more revenue for themselves, they need to also consider the fact that as they are increasing the revenue generation, as introducing more tax for the manufacturer is going to affect the everyday people, and then inflation will be on the run. So that's actually my take there. So the balance should be to enforce without actually stifling business out. Yeah.
I mean, I do agree with you when you said, tax is actually our responsibility, but I mean, the fear of every Nigerian is, okay, we pay our tax, we're going to pay our taxes. A lot of more people are going to start paying their taxes that have been, evading taxes before. But from next year, we would see a lot of people paying. But one of the fears is like, are we going to see our tax working for us? If as much as we put out that money as well. I mean, that's just one of the fears. But now we are seeing that next year, even those who are working remotely are also for foreign companies will also be paying some tax, about 25%. Do you think, I mean, Nigeria is already facing a brain drain, right? So we have this brain drain issue. A lot of our experts, a lot of people, especially health workers, are leaving the country for greener pastures. Now, those who have stayed behind are trying to, figure out work remotely with foreign companies, and now they're being taxed. Do you think that it would push more of our talents to relocate or to even hide their earnings?
Yeah, so I was jokingly talking to a friend yesterday. The truth is that most people, the people that are working remotely that have not left the country, it's not because they don't want to leave. It's sometimes because of the cost of living is now more expensive. So if the cost of living is even more like the various minimum, I know a lot of people will leave, right? Now, that being said, now the risk is very real. Remote workers are globally mobile. So if Nigeria, for example, makes the tax burden too heavy without providing services in return, because that seems to be the problem. People will either relocate and obviously under reports. The conversation I had with a friend, he was telling me that how would they know how much I earn? Is not what I told them that they were going to do. But I'm looking forward to a system whereby people genuinely want to pay tax, because of what the government is doing, because they know that their money is going to work for them. Now, the bigger danger, just like you mentioned, obviously will still be the brain drain issue. When we have skilled Nigerians that simply move to what I would call a more friendly environment, or a more tax friendly environment. So I would suggest that the government design a policy. They have to design the policy very carefully, and then make sure that they think deep before doing it, because it's easy to start a policy without considering the people that you want the policy to guide. So let's change around the corner. In practicality, we're going to see this thing work out. But I think that it's high time that people start getting the benefit of paying their tax, in Nigeria. So that's actually my thought. And we're all going to be affected, even you yourself. So just look forward to January. Maybe you're going to do an online protest or something. But then our fingers are crossed.
I mean, I do agree with you when you say um the government should, try to find a policy as well that would work. But like you said something was like, how are they going to find out how much you're earning, right? But I mean, there was this speculation that where they said you're going to have to have your account, you're going to have your tax identification number attached to it as well. And then they came back to it was like, oh no, we didn't say that. You don't need to have it on your bank account. Do you think that that's one strategy, even if the banks have denied it? Do you think that that's one strategy that the government is going to use to say, your tax identification number will be merged with your bank account so they are easy, they may monitor your income that's coming in into your bank? Or what way do you think the government should use to be able to get how much people are earning as opposed to people just, genuinely declaring it as well?
Yeah, so I don't think I want to be teaching the government how to catch some of my friends, right? But you get, be that as it may, right? You also observe that they are in this tax law, they're trying to merge all the form of biometrics that we have into one. So you're going to have one form of identification, which is an ID, the tax ID, and it's going to be that ID that you use. And that ID might actually, I think it's connected also. According to him, he did not know that it was a grant, right? So when he logged in his BVN into the credit score and saw that it's only about 300,000, he felt a bit bad. So that BVN itself can actually just imputing it into a system can actually just review the credits that you have or what you're owing to other systems. So the same thing applies with this tax law. So imagine when you're now connecting the TIN number, the tax identification number to your BVN number, those two identification numbers are now linked as one. So the tax master will obviously have that number. And there is no way. So even if you decide not to, let's say, for example, you're working remotely and you decide not to pay tax or you don't want to get the tax number, but you have a BVN, and maybe they can generate a tax number from your BVN and they'll get to see if those people want to catch you, they will catch you. They know what they are planning. So it's not even in my place to tell them what to do and how to get our money. They know how to get our money.
I know they do know how to get it, right? I mean, we look forward to, the new tax regime. And most importantly is, I mean, I personally just look forward to, taxes reflecting, changes in the country, our community as well. Thank you very much, Victor, for joining us on today's episode. It was really interesting, gaining from your insights as well. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. You have a nice voice, by the way.
Thank you very much. To all our listeners, this podcast is by SBM Intelligence. You can access our podcast by searching for SBM Intelligence anywhere you find podcasts. For deeper insights into our work, visit our website at sbmintel.com. Remember to connect with us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on X, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn at SBM Intelligence. That's all for today. Thank you for listening.